Sharp Company manufactures a product for which the following standards have been set. Our direct material standards are 3 feet per unit at a standard rate or price of $5 per foot. Direct labor is unknown in terms of standard hours, as is our standard rate or price. We're told that during the month of March, the company purchased direct materials at a cost of $55,650, all of which were used in the production of 3,200 units of product. In addition, 4,900 hours of direct labor time were worked on the product during the month. And the cost of this labor was $36,750. And we're given the following variances. We're told our direct materials quantity variance is $4,500 unfavorable variance. We have a total direct labor variance of $1,650 favorable. And we have a direct labor efficiency variance of $800, and it's unfavorable. Let's go ahead and calculate or compute the missing items. Let's begin by calculating our standard quantity for direct materials. Our standard quantity for direct materials will be 9,600. This is the 3,200 units of product that we sold multiplied by our standard quantity of 3 feet per unit. Next, we can calculate our standard quantity times our standard price, or our total standard cost of direct materials, and that's going to be $48,000. That's the 9,600 standard feet times $5 per foot. We can now use the $4,800 standard cost and our $4,500 unfavorable quantity variance to calculate the value in our center column. And since our variance is unfavorable, we know our actual quantity will be greater than our standard quantity. So we'll take the $48,000 and add to it the $4,500 variance to get $52,500. If we divide the $52,500 by our standard price of $5 per foot, we can get our actual quantity of 10,500 feet. Let's go ahead for our actual quantities times actual prices. Again, our actual quantity we've just calculated is 10,500, which means our actual price then is our actual cost of $55,650 divided by the 10,500 actual quantity, or feet, to get $5.30 per foot. Our price variance then is $3,150, and we know it's an unfavorable variance since our actual price of $5.30 is greater than the standard price of $5. Our total materials variance then is our price variance of $3,150 and our quantity variance of $4,500 added together, and they were both unfavorable. So we have a total unfavorable variance of $7,650. We could have also calculated this as the difference between our actual cost of $55,650 and our standard cost of $48,000. We'll begin looking at our direct labor variances by first calculating our rate variance. We're told that we have a $1,650 favorable total variance, and if we have an $800 unfavorable efficiency variance, this must mean that our rate variance has to be $2,450, and it needs to be a favorable variance. Next, we can use that to calculate our actual price or actual rate. And actually, we don't need to calculate this, but it'll be useful just to confirm that we do indeed have that favorable variance. If we take our actual labor cost of $36,750 and divide it by 4,900 actual hours, we would get an actual rate of $7.50. Let's go ahead now and look at our center column. Since our actual rate is less than our standard rate, we have a favorable variance, or we should say, since we have a favorable variance, we know our actual rate is less than our standard rate. And our center column will be our $36,750 actual expense plus our $2,450 favorable rate variance. We can now use our total for this column and divide it by our actual hours to come up with our standard rate of $8 per hour. And indeed, this would be consistent with our favorable rate variance and our $7.50 actual rate. Moving on then, we've calculated our standard rate, and we can pick this up in our far right-hand column for our standard rate. And then the total for our standard labor cost will be equal to our $39,200 center column minus an $800 unfavorable efficiency variance. And we know we need to subtract this, since an unfavorable variance means our actual hours were greater than our standard hours, which means, again, this standard column should be less than this center column. Finally, as a last step, we can calculate our standard hours by taking the 34,800 and dividing it by our $8 per hour standard rate, and we get 4,800 standard hours.